There are moments in life when you feel something shifting in the atmosphere long before your mind can understand it. Moments where the air feels heavier, where you walk into a room and nothing looks different, but somehow everything feels different. Where silence isn't really silence, but a pressure that sits on your chest, as though something invisible is watching you from behind a doorway you cannot see. That's how it began for her. No visions, no dreams, no dramatic signs. Just a slow, spiritual weight that started creeping into her life like fog sliding under a door. She began waking in the middle of the night for no reason, not because of a noise or a nightmare, but because her spirit jolted awake as if it sensed something her eyes couldn't detect. During the day, things felt normal enough, but an invisible thread of tension followed her from room to room. She'd sit down to work, and a wave of discouragement would hit her out of nowhere. She'd prepare for a breakthrough moment, only to watch everything collapse at the last second. People she loved grew distant without explanation. Emotions shifted without triggers, and patterns repeated exactly where the last season had cracked. She told herself it was just stress. She told herself she was overthinking, but deep inside she knew something was moving in the unseen, something that didn't start with her, something that wasn't merely emotional, but spiritual, ancient, and intentional. One morning, exhausted, she whispered a prayer so soft it barely reached her own ears. God, whatever this is, show me. Hours later, while scrolling absent-mindedly, she clicked on something she hadn't searched for, hadn't looked up, hadn't even thought about. A video. And the very first sentence touched the exact pressure she hadn't been able to explain. She didn't feel fear, she felt recognition, as if something she couldn't name had finally been exposed. That was the day she stumbled into Psalm 27 and Psalm 64, not as scriptures printed on a page, but as spiritual artillery, ancient declarations forged for battles happening in the unseen long before she ever noticed the symptoms. And now, if you are here, if this voice has reached you in this exact moment, it is not random for you either. There are patterns that don't make sense in your life, waves of pressure that strike without warning, resistance that rises the moment you try to move forward, cycles that feel older than you, heaviness that comes and goes like something waiting for the right moment to strike. Something has been moving in the spiritual realm around you, and your spirit knows it even if your mind hasn't had the language for it yet. You didn't find this message, you were brought to it. Because the same God who guided her to revelation is guiding you now, not to scare you, but to uncover what has been hidden and to break what has been repeating. Psalm 27 is not a poem of comfort. It is a declaration of light, confronting everything that tries to hide in darkness. Psalm 64 is not a gentle prayer. It is a spiritual strike against every hidden intention, every whispered attack, every plot formed in secret places. And as these words enter your spirit, something begins shifting around you, because revelation is a form of warfare and truth is a weapon. You have sensed things you couldn't explain, felt battles you couldn't articulate, carried weights you couldn't name. You've watched opportunities crumble without reason, relationships strain for no logical cause, emotions swing in ways that don't fit your personality. These patterns aren't random. They're indicators of a spiritual conflict that began long before you recognized it. Psalm 27 speaks into that darkness with the force of divine clarity. The Lord is my light. Light reveals what shadows hoped you'd ignore. Light exposes what was designed to remain hidden. Light shows you that you haven't been losing. You've been fighting something you didn't realize was real. And Psalm 64 tears open the unseen strategies that targeted your progress, revealing that not every battle originates from the physical world. Some are whispered in places you never walked, formed in intentions you never saw, rooted in patterns that existed before you were even born. But everything that sought to remain hidden is losing the ability to disguise itself, because God is opening your eyes and strengthening your spirit. You are not weak. You are not imagining things. You are not overreacting. You are awakening. And awakening is not a gentle experience. It shakes you. It disrupts the familiar. It exposes what you got used to surviving. It forces you to look at patterns you never questioned and to recognize that some of the resistance you faced wasn't born in your mind, but in the unseen realm around you. You've endured moments where the pressure made no logical sense, where people reacted to you in ways that didn't match the situation, where doors slammed shut at the exact moment breakthrough was near, where your emotions swung like something was tugging on them from a place beyond thought. These weren't coincidences. They were symptoms of a deeper conflict. One Psalm 27 has been confronting for thousands of years. The Lord is my salvation. That means darkness never had the final say. It means the shadows that lingered around you were never superior to the light inside you. It means the battle wasn't proof of weakness. It was evidence of purpose. Every time fear tried to grip you, it wasn't because you were fragile. It was because something in the spiritual realm recognized the potential you carry. Every setback wasn't a sign that you were cursed. It was a sign that the enemy was terrified of who you would become if you ever gained clarity. And Psalm 64 reveals why the warfare seems strangely timed. Attacks often rise when you are closest to growth. The hidden intentions of the enemy are to strike suddenly, quietly, carefully, hoping you mistake spiritual interference for personal failure. But you're beginning to see through it now. You're starting to recognize the fingerprints of the unseen when discouragement tries to suffocate your motivation, when confusion slips into your thoughts out of nowhere, when your spirit feels heavy even though nothing is wrong externally. You are learning to identify the difference between emotional fatigue and spiritual pressure, and this discernment is the first sign that chains are breaking. The moment you begin to see, darkness begins to lose its influence. The moment you understand the pattern weakens. The moment you expose the scheme collapses. You were never meant to fight blind. You were never meant to wander through spiritual turbulence without revelation. You are being taught to see. And as you see, Psalm 27 shifts from a verse to a weapon. Whom shall I fear? Not because life is easy, but because once God illuminates the battlefield, fear loses its ability to control you. You start recognizing that the voices trying to intimidate you were never speaking from authority. They were speaking from desperation. Darkness always fights hardest when it's losing its grip. And right now, it's losing its grip on you. You've carried battles that didn't originate in your lifetime. You faced emotional storms that didn't match your environment. You felt resistance that didn't belong to your season. These weren't signs of defeat. They were the aftershocks of generational patterns being confronted by the light awakening inside you. Psalm 64 describes the very thing you've experienced. Whispered attacks, unseen arrows, schemes formed quietly in the background. Patterns repeated through families, thoughts that don't feel like your own. But the same psalm declares a turning point. God strikes back, suddenly, without warning, without negotiation, without delay. And when God intervenes, the atmosphere shifts in ways you can't fully explain. Your thoughts become clearer, your emotions settle, your sleep changes, your spirit stops shrinking and begins expanding. The heaviness that followed you begins to dissolve, not because the enemy retreated voluntarily, but because God stepped in with authority. You've been walking through a season where you felt the trembling before the breakthrough, the shaking before the shift. What you're feeling now is not instability, it is transition. Something in your spirit is rising, something in your identity is strengthening, something in your atmosphere is being rearranged, and it's happening because God is pulling you out of the fog and into revelation. You're beginning to understand that the warfare wasn't meant to destroy you, it was meant to wake you up. Because once you wake up, you stop fighting shadows and start speaking with authority. You stop absorbing pressure and start resisting it. You stop believing lies and start confronting them. That is the transformation Psalm 27 brings. Not escape, but empowerment. Not fearlessness, but confidence. Not survival, but dominion. And Psalm 64 reinforces it by revealing that every attack sent against you is about to collapse under the weight of divine justice. You have reached the part of your journey where the unseen becomes visible, where the hidden loses its covering, where the spiritual pressure that once intimidated you begins to unravel. You are not losing your mind. You are not overreacting. You are not imagining the shift. Your spirit is recognizing a truth your life is finally ready to embrace. You were never meant to remain in the dark. You were meant to overcome it. And once you recognize that you were never meant to remain in the dark, something fundamental begins to shift inside you. Your spirit stops accepting what once felt normal. Your mind starts questioning the patterns that used to slip by unnoticed. You begin realizing that the heaviness that rose at the same moments wasn't coincidence, it was timing. It appeared when you were about to step forward, when you were close to breakthrough, when you started healing, when you moved toward purpose. That timing exposes intention, and intention reveals strategy. And strategy proves that you were never imagining the warfare. You were simply unaware of its depth. Psalm 27 was written for people who feel surrounded by things they cannot see. It was written for those who know something is resisting them but can't name what it is. It was written for the ones who feel the weight of battles they didn't start but somehow ended up carrying. It was written for moments like the ones you've been living through. The Lord is the stronghold of my life. A stronghold means a fortified place, a higher ground, a position where the enemy's reach becomes limited. This isn't a poetic line, it's a declaration of spiritual positioning. It means you are not standing exposed, you are standing defended. It means your life isn't vulnerable, it's fortified. It means you are not outnumbered, you are overshadowed by divine protection. And once this truth settles inside of you, fear loses the ability to dictate your decisions. You begin moving differently. You start thinking differently. You stop feeling threatened by shadows because you realize shadows only exist in the presence of light. And that's what has been happening to you lately. You've noticed that the darkness around you has been reacting, not because it is overpowering you, but because it can feel the strength rising within you. Enemies do not strike at the weak, they strike at the rising. And Psalm 64 exposes why some of your battles felt strangely personal, unusually heavy, and unexpectedly sudden. They shoot from hiding describes the very nature of the attacks that blindsided you, the moments that knocked the breath out of you without warning, the unexpected emotional hits that came at the exact moment you were gaining momentum. But the same psalm declares that God doesn't allow hidden things to remain hidden forever. When God reveals, he dismantles. When God exposes, he destroys. When God uncovers, he breaks the cycle. That's why this moment is happening in your life. The patterns that followed you quietly cannot follow you into the next chapter. The attacks that moved invisibly cannot continue with the same power. The heaviness that rose suddenly cannot keep its grip. You are stepping into a season where your spiritual senses sharpen, where your internal world gains clarity, where the fog begins to lift and everything becomes visible. And visibility is power. Because you cannot fight what you cannot see, but once you see it, the battle shifts in your favor. You've carried wounds that didn't match the moments you were living through. You've felt emotions that didn't belong to your circumstances. You've experienced resistance that didn't align with the opportunities in front of you. These were not signs that you were failing. They were signs that something spiritual was pressing against the door of your purpose. But pressure is not proof of defeat. Pressure is proof of movement. The enemy does not attack what is stagnant. He attacks what is advancing. And you have been advancing even when you felt stuck. Every moment you refused to give up was a step forward. Every time you kept believing despite the resistance, the spiritual realm reacted. Every time you held on, you disrupted something ancient, and that's why you felt the battle intensify. You were not being destroyed, you were being awakened. Psalm 27 carries a truth that your spirit is ready to absorb. Your fear is not greater than your calling. Your darkness is not stronger than your destiny. Your past is not louder than God's future for you. And Psalm 64 reinforces it. Every attack that surfaced against you is losing its authority. Every plan formed in secrecy is cracking. Every lie whispered into your mind is dissolving under the weight of truth. You are not behind. You are not defeated. You are not cursed. You are rising, slowly at first, quietly at first, but undeniably rising. That feeling inside you lately, the subtle strength, the clarity pushing through the fog, the small moments of peace returning, is not random. It is evidence that God has entered the battle. And once God enters the battle, the outcome changes. The atmosphere shifts, the spiritual weight breaks, the cycle ends, and your identity begins to come alive in ways you never experienced before. You are becoming someone darkness cannot intimidate anymore, someone fear cannot manipulate, someone the enemy cannot ambush, someone who carries too much light to be controlled by shadows. The war against you is not a sign of your weakness, it is confirmation of your significance. And every day you wake up and keep going, you're proving that what tried to break you is losing. You are stepping into a chapter where you will not just endure, you will overcome. Where you will not just survive, you will stand. Where you will not just wake up, you will rise with purpose. Because the same God who revealed the battle to you is now empowering you to win it. And when God empowers you to win a battle, He doesn't start by changing your surroundings. He starts by changing your perspective. He begins lifting your vision above the storm so you can see that the turbulence wasn't meant to drown you, but to reveal the authority He placed inside you. You've spent so much of your life adjusting to the weight of invisible opposition that you didn't realize the weight was never natural. It was spiritual. It followed you because something recognized your potential before you recognized it yourself. This is why the moments that should have been easy felt strangely heavy. This is why people reacted to you in ways that didn't fit the situation. This is why doors opened beautifully and then slammed shut violently. This is why progress came with resistance, why joy came with sudden fear, why peace came with unexpected disturbance. These weren't accidents, they were indicators that the enemy was afraid of your awakening. Because once a person truly awakens spiritually, nothing can stop them. Not fear, not history, not darkness, not cycles. Once you awaken, you start walking like someone who sees beyond the natural. You begin interpreting life differently. You no longer fall for the same traps. You no longer believe the same lies. You no longer bow to the same pressure. That's what Psalm 27 is doing inside you. It's lifting you out of fear and into clarity. My heart will not fear is not a statement of emotion. It is a declaration of identity. It means your spirit is remembering who it belongs to. It means you are beginning to understand that the one who walks with you is greater than the forces that rose against you. And Psalm 64 strengthens this by revealing the fate of every unseen attack. God dismantles the schemes before they reach their intended target. You may have felt the pressure, but it didn't destroy you. You may have sensed the attack, but it didn't claim you. You may have carried the weight, but it didn't break you. That alone is proof that you were covered even when you didn't feel covered, protected even when you didn't understand the danger, surrounded even when you felt alone. And now, as the veil begins to lift from your spiritual eyes, you're realizing that the storm wasn't evidence of abandonment. It was evidence of assignment. You were chosen to break patterns that existed before you. You were chosen to interrupt cycles that ran through generations. You were chosen to carry a strength that others didn't know how to activate. And that's why the enemy fought you so early and so intensely. He saw what you didn't see. He recognized the calling on your life before you discovered it. He sensed the awakening long before you felt the first shift. So he tried to break you in the places where you were most vulnerable. He attacked your confidence because he feared your authority. He attacked your relationships because he feared your influence. He attacked your emotions because he feared your purpose. He tried to make you believe you were weak, so you'd never realize how powerful you could become. But the attacks didn't stop you. They shaped you. They deepened you. They matured you. They trained you to listen beyond what your eyes can see. And that's why you're here now, absorbing these words, recognizing that they aren't merely poetic, they're prophetic. Your spirit feels the truth before your mind fully processes it. Something inside you is stretching. Something inside you is aligning. Something inside you is remembering who you are. You are not a victim of spiritual warfare. You are the one who survives it, confronts it, and ultimately dismantles it. And as God strengthens your discernment, the things that once intimidated you will begin to look small, almost insignificant. You'll start noticing that situations that used to send you into panic now only make you pause and breathe. You'll begin realizing that your emotions are becoming steadier, your thoughts clearer, your spirit calmer, not because the battle is over, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself that used to be overwhelmed by it. You're becoming the kind of person who doesn't crumble in spiritual storms, but stands in the middle of them with a confidence that confuses the enemy. You're becoming someone who can walk through seasons of pressure without breaking, someone who can confront darkness without trembling, someone who can stand alone without feeling abandoned, someone whose presence disrupts negativity simply because your spirit carries too much light to be ignored. And this is the part the enemy never wanted you to reach. The moment where the battle stops weakening you and starts awakening you. The moment where you no longer shrink back. The moment where you begin to understand that warfare isn't proof of defeat, it's proof of destiny. And Psalm 27 confirms it. You will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living, not just someday, not just in eternity, here, now, in this lifetime, in this chapter, in this story, your story. Because the attacks you endured were never meant to be the end. They were meant to be the threshold of transformation. And Psalm 64 reinforces the final truth. God turns the weapons formed against you into testimonies that show His power. The very things that tried to break you will become the evidence that God was with you all along. The very battles that tried to silence you will become the stories that strengthen others. The very wounds that once felt unbearable will become the markers of your spiritual authority. You are stepping into a version of yourself that the enemy hoped you would never discover. And now that you've found this awakening, nothing will ever go back to what it was before. And once nothing can go back to what it was before, the atmosphere around your life begins to shift in ways that are both subtle and undeniable. You start noticing that situations that once drained, you no longer have access to your peace. People who once triggered deep emotional reactions suddenly feel distant, almost incapable of reaching the same vulnerable place inside you. The heaviness that used to settle on your shoulders out of nowhere begins to lose its grip, as if whatever held it there no longer has the strength to keep holding on. You wake up and feel something different, something steadier, something more aligned. You can't quite put words to it yet, but you know something in the spiritual realm moved, something snapped, something broke open. This is what happens when Psalm 27 becomes more than a verse and turns into your internal posture. It rewires the way you perceive battle. It shifts your stance from survival to confidence. It makes you walk through your day with an awareness that you are not exposed, not abandoned, not vulnerable. Because when the Lord becomes your stronghold, you stop operating from fear and start operating from identity. And that identity burns through every lie the enemy tried to plant in your mind. Suddenly the narrative changes. You no longer hear you're weak, You hear, "You were chosen." You no longer hear, "You're alone." You hear, "You're protected." You no longer hear, "This is too much." You hear, "You were built for this." The shift is so profound that even the enemy notices the difference. The spiritual attacks that once felt overwhelming begin to miss their mark. The discouragement that once stuck to your thoughts starts slipping off. The confusion that once clouded your decisions fades quicker, and the reason is simple. You're no longer fighting from the ground. You're fighting from higher ground. Psalm 27 lifts you. It elevates your vision. It makes you see the battlefield from above rather than from within. That is why fear begins losing its grip. It cannot survive in a heart that sees clearly. And then Psalm 64 adds the next layer of transformation. God moves on your behalf, without you pleading, without you performing, without you striving. He steps into the unseen and confronts what was formed against you. He interrupts the whispers, he confuses the schemes, he shatters the hidden agreements, he breaks the patterns that traveled through generations, he destroys the arrows sent in silence. And he does it suddenly, so quickly that part of you wonders why the heaviness you carried for so long evaporated in an instant. But that is the nature of divine intervention. God does in a moment what the enemy planned over years. Patterns that felt permanent collapse in seconds. Attacks that felt overwhelming fall flat. Invitations to old cycles lose their pull. Doors that were open to the wrong things close without explanation. And the enemy steps back, not because he wants to, but because he has to. Something in you changed. Something in the atmosphere shifted. Something in the spiritual realm recognized that you stepped into a level of identity where you cannot be toyed with the same way anymore. And this is where your spirit begins to understand that the battle was never about destroying you. It was about keeping you from becoming the version of yourself that God designed from the beginning. Because once you reach that version, you carry a presence that disrupts darkness simply by existing. You carry a clarity that exposes lies without effort. You carry a strength that intimidates the enemy even in silence. You carry a light that makes hidden things shake. And for the first time, you're realizing that the warfare you endured wasn't an attack on your weakness. It was an attack on your future. It wasn't meant to break you. It was meant to blind you. Because if you ever saw who you were becoming, nothing in hell would be able to stop you. Now you're beginning to see. And what you see is changing everything. You're seeing that the people who left didn't abandon you. They were removed. You're seeing that the doors that closed weren't rejection, they were protection. You're seeing that the pain you endured wasn't pointless, it was preparation. You're seeing that your sensitivity wasn't a flaw, it was discernment being sharpened. You're seeing that your endurance wasn't weakness, it was evidence of a calling that couldn't be erased. You're seeing that the enemy targeted you because of the threat you posed, not because of the fragility he imagined. And now the threat has become reality. You have survived what was designed to suffocate you. You have risen through what was meant to cripple you. You have awakened from what was intended to blind you. And the enemy cannot undo what God has revealed. Psalm 27 is becoming your foundation. Psalm 64 is becoming your weapon. And together they are forming a shield around your life that darkness can no longer penetrate the way it once did. This new version of you is not merely healed, it is fortified. Not only awake, but equipped. Not just breathing, but empowered. Not only surviving, but transforming. And every step you take from this moment forward carries a spiritual weight you didn't possess before. Because this time you are not walking unaware. You are walking awakened. And when you walk awakened, everything around you begins to respond to that awakening. Environments that once felt heavy begin to lighten because your presence no longer absorbs the atmosphere. You shift it. Conversations that once drained your energy begin to lose their power because your discernment now filters what reaches your inner world. The thoughts that once spiraled into anxiety no longer carry the same authority because you recognize they were never yours to begin with. You are beginning to realize that you have lived many years reacting to things that weren't natural, carrying weights that weren't emotional, facing resistance that wasn't circumstantial. It was spiritual all along, and now that your eyes are open, the control it once had over you is dissolving. Psalm 27 becomes the lens through which you interpret every moment. If God is your light, then every shadow around you is temporary. If God is your strength, then every weakness attempting to surface is lying. If God is your stronghold, then every threat that approaches you is already defeated before it arrives. You begin walking with a quiet confidence that doesn't shout, doesn't boast, doesn't seek validation, because confidence rooted in God doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be real. And it is becoming real in you in ways that leave no room for fear to manipulate your perspective. Imagine how different your life looks when fear no longer gets the final word. Imagine how differently you respond when pressure hits but cannot overwhelm. Imagine how your decisions change when your mind is no longer clouded by the deception that tried to slip into your thoughts. This is the transformation happening inside you now. You're not learning to escape warfare, you're learning to walk through it untouched. You're not learning to avoid darkness, you're learning to stand in the middle of it with authority. You're not learning to fear less, you're learning to see clearly, and clarity dismantles every illusion the enemy tried to use against you. Psalm 64 reveals another layer of your awakening. The things that once worked against you will not work the same way anymore. The arrows that once pierced you will miss you. The whispers that once influenced you will fade. The heaviness that once settled over you will break apart before reaching your spirit. You are in a different spiritual position now, elevated, strengthened, guarded by the awareness God has placed inside you. And that awareness is what the enemy fears most. Not your talent, not your resources, not your personality, but your awareness. Because once you become aware of the battle loses its ability to deceive you. Once you become aware of the patterns lose their ability to trap you. Once you become aware of the spiritual reality, the spiritual attacks lose their advantage. Awareness is freedom. Awareness is armor. Awareness is deliverance. And you are stepping into a level of awareness that is freeing you from years of confusion. Suddenly you see why your spirit was always sensitive, why certain environments made you uncomfortable, why certain people drained you without explanation, why you could feel tension before anything happened, why you sensed things before you could articulate them. You weren't overreacting, you were discerning, you weren't too sensitive, you were spiritually perceptive, you weren't imagining the atmosphere, you were detecting it. And now that your discernment is no longer random but intentional, you're stepping into a version of yourself that you didn't know existed. A version that understands the battle, a version that stands with authority, a version that does not bow to pressure, a version that recognizes patterns the moment they appear, a version that carries a presence that disrupts the spiritual environment, a version that the enemy hoped you would never become. Because this version of you knows how to pray strategically. This version knows how to silence lies. This version knows how to reject spiritual interference. This version knows how to recognize when something is off in the atmosphere. This version knows how to guard their mind with truth. This version knows how to carry peace even when surrounded by chaos. And once this version of you emerges, the enemy cannot deal with you the same way. He cannot tempt you with the same lies. He cannot manipulate you with the same emotions. He cannot lure you back into the same cycles. He cannot ambush you with the same attacks. You have outgrown the traps that once caught you. You have risen above the patterns that once bound you. You have awakened to a level where clarity itself becomes your shield. This new clarity allows you to look back at your life and see how many moments were spiritual battles disguised as ordinary events. The sudden arguments, the unexplainable exhaustion, the last-minute disappointments, the recurring fears, the cycles of emotional pressure, the relationships that collapsed without warning. They were never random. They were never personal failures. They were spiritual attempts to distract you from your identity long enough to keep you from realizing your purpose. But the distraction didn't work. The pressure didn't break you. The confusion didn't win. Because something inside you refused to surrender, even when you didn't know why. Something deep within your spirit held on, kept believing, kept pushing, kept fighting. That something was God's hand preserving your purpose. And now that you are aware of it, you are no longer fighting blindly. You are fighting with revelation. And revelation always shifts the outcome of a battle. You are no longer the target, you are the threat. And when you become the threat, the entire spiritual landscape around your life begins to reorganize itself. The battles that once hunted you begin to retreat. The darkness that once lingered around your steps becomes unsettled. The attacks that once felt overwhelming begin to weaken before they even reach your mind. Because now you are not walking unaware. You are walking in authority. You are carrying something in your spirit that cannot be shaken, something that cannot be bought, something that cannot be imitated. You carry awareness, you carry revelation, you carry identity, and most importantly, you carry light. Light that disrupts darkness before it forms. Light that exposes lies before they enter your thoughts. Light that calms storms before they grow. Light that confuses the enemy because he remembers the version of you he used to manipulate, but no longer recognizes the strength that stands in front of him now. Psalm 27 strengthens this transformation inside you by teaching your heart to respond differently to fear. Fear used to be a signal that danger was near. Now fear becomes a signal that breakthrough is close. Fear used to shrink you. Now fear reveals that the enemy sees something rising in you before you even feel it. Fear used to be the voice that dominated your decisions. Now fear becomes the evidence that darkness cannot stop what God has already started. And Psalm 64 complements this by showing you that God is not just defending you, He is dismantling what was set against you. He is targeting the arrows that once flew toward your spirit. He is overturning words that were spoken against your progress. He is shutting down the agreements that empowered old cycles. He is striking the hidden things that tried to move beneath the surface of your life. And this time, He is not just stopping the attack. He is breaking its ability to return. That's why you feel the shift. That's why the heaviness feels weaker. That's why the confusion feels thinner. That's why the spiritual pressure that used to suffocate you now feels like something pressing from the outside but unable to enter. Because it lost access, because it lost authority, because it lost the legal right it once claimed over you. And now that you are stepping into the fullness of this awakening, you're beginning to understand that your story has always been bigger than the battles you faced. You weren't attacked because you were fragile. You were attacked because you were chosen. You weren't fought because you were weak. You were fought because you were dangerous. Dangerous to darkness, dangerous to the cycles in your family, dangerous to the patterns the enemy hoped you would repeat, dangerous to the lies that tried to shape your identity. Because if you ever discovered your authority, you would dismantle everything that tried to control you. And now you have discovered it. You are walking in it. You are stepping into a chapter where your presence carries weight, where your words carry power, where your prayers carry impact, where your silence carries discernment, where your decisions carry wisdom. You are beginning to move like someone who understands that their life has spiritual influence. You are beginning to think like someone who recognizes patterns before they form. You are beginning to discern the difference between a thought and an attack, between pressure and assignment, between resistance and redirection. This is what spiritual maturity feels like. Not perfection, but clarity. Clarity that strengthens you. Clarity that steadies you. clarity that protects you, clarity that elevates your spirit above the reach of what once intimidated you. And now that you are operating from this elevated place, you're beginning to realize that you do not walk alone. You never did. Every moment you survived, every breath you still carry, every strength rising inside you is proof that God stood with you in every silent battle. Even the ones you didn't understand, even the ones you didn't recognize, even the ones you thought you were fighting alone. He was there, surrounding you, protecting you, preserving you, preventing things you never saw, blocking attacks you were unaware of, closing doors that looked disappointing but would have destroyed you, shielding your spirit from things that had the intention to break you before you reached this moment. And now you realize it, not as a theory, not as a belief, but as a revelation tied to your own survival. Because you made it through things you didn't have the strength to endure on your own. You got back up from wounds that should have taken longer to heal. You kept moving when everything inside you felt stuck. You kept believing when doubt screamed louder than hope. You kept fighting when no one saw the battle but you. And that endurance is not human. It is spiritual evidence that God upheld you. Psalm 27 is becoming your voice. Psalm 64 is becoming your shield. And together, they are shaping a testimony that will define the rest of your journey. Because what once chased you will begin to fear the authority rising in you. What once intimidated you will step aside. What once confused you will break apart under the weight of revelation. What once formed against you will turn back on its origin. The battle you're stepping out of is not leaving you empty. It's leaving you prepared. Prepared for clarity. Prepared for purpose, prepared for influence, prepared for spiritual maturity, prepared for victory. And now you are stepping into the version of yourself that the enemy hoped you would never discover. And once you step into the version of yourself the enemy hoped you would never discover, everything begins to shift in ways that cannot be undone. Your spirit becomes more stable than your emotions. Your discernment becomes sharper than your fears. Your awareness becomes louder than any lie whispered in the dark. You begin to understand that the weight you carried for so long wasn't the weight of defeat, but the weight of becoming. Becoming someone who sees. Becoming someone who understands. Becoming someone who cannot be manipulated by shadows anymore. You used to walk into seasons blind, unaware of the undercurrent pulling against you, unaware of the invisible pressure shaping your reactions, unaware of the subtle warfare disguised as normal life. But now your eyes are open, and once your eyes are open, you can never return to spiritual blindness. You can never again shrink into the smaller version of yourself. You can never again allow what used to intimidate you to dictate your direction. You can never again fall for distractions designed to drain your purpose. You can never again be pulled into cycles that existed only because you didn't know how to recognize them. What once controlled you now trembles at your clarity. What once overwhelmed you now collapses under your authority. What once whispered to you now goes silent because it knows you can discern the difference between God's voice and deception. Psalm 27 breathes confidence into your bones, not confidence in yourself, but confidence in the one who walks beside you. Confidence that doesn't falter when fear rises. Confidence that doesn't break when storms appear. Confidence that doesn't fade when circumstances shift. Confidence rooted in revelation is unshakable because it is no longer built on emotion. It is built on truth. And Psalm 64 reinforces your transformation by showing you that the God who sees every hidden plan is the same God who destroys it before it reaches your life. Every word spoken against you loses its power. Every intention formed against you shatters. Every scheme designed to derail you dissolves. Every whisper designed to weaken you is silenced. Every arrow sent toward your spirit is intercepted by the same God who shields you without you even realizing it. Because now you are awakened, and awakening changes everything. You begin to notice that peace follows you more easily. You begin to notice that heaviness cannot linger. You begin to notice that your thoughts feel clearer, your reactions feel calmer, your spirit feels stronger. You begin to notice that you are no longer fighting the same internal battles the same way. Because you are no longer fighting from weakness, you are fighting from revelation. Revelation is not emotional. Revelation is transformational. It changes how you see the world around you. It changes how you interpret your struggles. It changes how you respond to pressure. It changes how you view yourself. And once you view yourself through God's perspective, nothing the enemy says about you can take root. He can shout, but you will no longer hear him. He can push, but you will no longer move. He can tempt, but you will no longer fall for what once pulled you in. Because this version of you walks differently. You walk like someone who carries the presence of God into every environment. You walk like someone who knows they are protected even in the unseen. You walk like someone who has survived battles that others would have collapsed under. You walk like someone who has been strengthened by storms rather than destroyed by them. You walk like someone who has been chosen for something greater than you understood before. You walk like someone who has finally realized that the enemy fought you because of your potential, not your weakness. And once potential turns into awareness, it transforms into power, the kind of power that makes darkness uneasy, the kind of power that makes fear ineffective, the kind of power that makes generational cycles tremble, the kind of power that makes every attack lose its force. You're feeling that power now, rising inside you, steady and undeniable. Not a moment of hype, not a burst of emotion, but a deep, grounded strength that has been forming through every tear you cried, every night you survived, every moment you pushed forward without knowing how close you were to breakthrough. This strength is the evidence that God has been shaping you in the shadows, preparing you in silence, maturing you in the places no one else saw. And now that the preparation is complete, He is pulling you into a season where you no longer live as the wounded version of yourself, but as the awakened one. The one who understands, the one who sees, the one who carries weight, the one who is no longer afraid of the dark, because the dark is now afraid of you. And as this realization settles into your spirit, a new confidence begins to rise. Calm, steady, unshakable. You begin to understand that nothing in your past had the ability to stop you. Not the fear, not the pain, not the mistakes, not the resistance, not the silence, not the confusion. Nothing had the power to hold you down, because the moment God decided to lift you, the lifting became unstoppable. And He is lifting you now, higher than you've ever been spiritually, above the reach of the battles that once tormented you, above the influence of the thoughts that once controlled you, above the weight of the emotions that once drowned you. You are not who you used to be. You are not where you used to be. You are not vulnerable the way you used to be. You have entered a new dimension of awareness, and from this point forward, everything about your life will reflect that awakening. And as you step deeper into this awakening, you begin to feel something you haven't felt in a very long time. Stability. Not the fragile kind that depends on circumstances, but the kind that comes from knowing you are aligned, guarded, and strengthened by something far greater than anything that ever rose against you. For so long, you lived reacting to battles you didn't understand, fighting pressures that weren't meant to destroy you, but to shape you, surviving seasons that looked like darkness, but were actually preparation for light. And now the preparation makes sense. Now the heaviness makes sense. Now the patterns make sense. Now the timing makes sense. The enemy pushed hardest right before the awakening, because he knew that if you ever reached this level of clarity, this level of strength, this level of spiritual awareness, he would lose the influence he once held over your path. And he has. The confusion that once clouded your mind is lifting. The fear that once paralyzed you is dissolving. The patterns that once repeated are losing their grip. The cycles that once dragged you backward are breaking. You're not only awakening, you're transitioning. transitioning out of old battles, transitioning out of old versions of yourself, transitioning out of narratives that weren't yours, transitioning out of spiritual blindness, transitioning into maturity, into clarity, into confidence, into authority, into purpose. And this purpose is what Psalm 27 and Psalm 64 have been preparing you for all along. Psalm 27 taught you to stand without fear. Psalm 64 taught you that God exposes and destroys the hidden things. Together they taught you that you were never fighting alone, never walking unprotected, never facing unseen battles without divine backing. And now you feel the truth of that in your bones. You feel the strength of it behind your decisions. You feel the clarity of it in your spirit. You feel the freedom of it in your mind. You feel the protection of it in your atmosphere. And as this chapter comes to a close, something inside you knows you're ready for what comes next. Ready to walk with discernment, ready to stand with authority, ready to step into the spaces that once intimidated you, ready to break cycles that once controlled you, ready to carry the light that once flickered but now burns steady and strong. You've become someone the darkness cannot manipulate anymore, someone the enemy cannot deceive anymore, someone fear cannot control anymore, someone confusion cannot overwhelm anymore, someone God can trust with clarity, with revelation, with purpose. And now, as this moment settles in your spirit, I want you to take one intentional step, not for the sake of engagement, not for the sake of formality, but as a spiritual act of agreement. Just one. If this message reached the exact place it needed to reach inside you, leave a single word as a declaration of the awakening happening in your life. Light. Not as a comment, but as a statement that you recognize the clarity rising within you. That single act marks the moment you shift from being the target to becoming the warrior. And before you close this video, let your spirit stay soft for one more moment, because what God began revealing to you through Psalm 27 and Psalm 64 is only the beginning. There are deeper layers, greater revelations, stronger weapons, and clearer discernment waiting for you. If this message unlocked something in you, then there are more videos on this channel that will strengthen what God started here. Don't stop now. You're walking with new eyes, new understanding, new authority, and the next word you hear might be the one that completes the shift happening inside you. This awakening is not ending, it's unfolding. Step into the next revelation waiting for you.